Hello everybody and welcome to another Twilight Zone review. Today it is Season 5, Episode 30, Stopover in a Quiet Town, written by Earl Hamner Jr. and starring Barry Nelson as Bob Frasier and Nancy Malone as Millie Frasier. And this is a very good classic episode with an excellent twist. It has a few little issues here and there, but overall I would say it's an excellent Twilight Zone episode. So, we start with our couple, Bob and Millie, waking up. They're the main characters, and we find out that they had probably a little bit too much to drink. And it just seems normal. They're waking up, getting out of bed. The only problem is they don't recognize anything. They're trying to remember what happened, and Millie said she was driving home because obviously Bob couldn't drive, and she saw some kind of shadow come overhead, and she doesn't remember too much after that. So they go downstairs to the kitchen to see what's going on, if anybody's there, and of course nobody is there. They try the phone and it comes right off the wall because it's not wired. They try and open drawers, do things like that, but nothing works. They open the refrigerator and all that's there is props, and then we hear a child laughing. So that's a very intriguing setup for our episode. It's a pretty long opening, but it's effective. It works well. So after the opening narration, they go outside and we hear more laughing from the child. This will go on throughout the episode, and they look around just trying to, come to terms with their surroundings, and they argue a little bit about, how much Bob had to drink and things like that, and there's just no people anywhere in this town. Then Millie finds this squirrel, so she's excited. She says, oh, it's some kind of life, but it turns out that this is a stuffed squirrel. So they decide to knock on the door of a nearby house, and Millie yells, and there's just nobody around. They get nothing, but this child's laughing again. So at this point, they're getting more and more distressed. This is handled well as the episode builds up. So Bob has the idea, let's go to the church. There's got to be somebody there. So they go there, and no one is there. So Bob rings the church bell. He figures that's got to bring somebody, but they still don't get anybody. And Millie gets really distressed at this point, which is understandable. And she says it's only us in the town, but she says she feels like they're being watched, and I would say Millie's right. And once again, we get the laughing kid. I do like the child's laugh as well. I thought it worked pretty well. So they're still looking for something real. They find a fake tree, and they get upset about this. Then Bob lights a match, and it basically makes the ground catch fire, which they find out isn't really grass. It's some kind of paper mache. So I think we're starting to get the concept of something that's happening. There's a lot of clues here. It might be slightly on the predictable side, but the first time I watched it, I didn't totally figure out the ending, so it's fine. So they just continue to walk around now, and they find a car and a person in it, so they're excited. But of course, this person is fake. They're not real, and the car doesn't work at this point. So Bob is yelling, somebody must be playing a joke on me, or this must be some kind of test, and they're understandably getting more and more frustrated. So they argue for a little bit, then they apologize to each other. I thought those were some interesting mood swings, and we get the story again, and Millie still can't really remember exactly what happened, but she has this thought that maybe she crashed, and maybe they're deceased and they're in some kind of afterlife. Well, that's not the right theory, Millie, but at least you're trying to think of one. So at this point, they're starting to lose hope when they hear a railroad, and they see a train, so they're really happy and excited about this. They get on, and they figure wherever this takes us, it's got to be better than here. So the train leaves the station, and they just talk about how they might have got there. They seem to be getting along better, probably because they're getting out of this nightmare. And they're just chatting about Bob's work and just things you would chat about, I guess, on a train to pass time. And when the train stops, they're not too happy because Bob and Millie wind up right back where they started. So basically, the train just went in big long loop, and I think this pretty much gives away the rest of the episode at this point, but it's almost over, so that's fine. So they start walking again, and Millie says, let's run, and Bob says, no, we should walk because we don't know how long we're going to be walking. And all of a sudden, they look up to see how much sun is left, and they look really scared, and a few moments after that, we see this giant hand that grabs them, and we find out it is a giant kid, and she's from another planet, and it turns out her father kidnapped these people from a place called Earth, and they are now her pets, she calls them, so they're like pets, toys, however you want to say it, and they have been in this playtown the entire time, explaining the entire episode. So I do have a few questions about this episode. It's kind of hard to believe that they didn't look up and realize what was going on until then. They never looked up the whole time they were there to realize there was no sun. They could have found out who was watching them right away, but then we wouldn't have had an episode. And I do think this is an episode that once you know the twist and watch it again, it's still a fun episode to watch, but I don't think it's quite as effective the second time. But this is definitely a classic episode with a memorable ending, and I really enjoyed it a lot. So I give Stopover in a Quiet Town a 4 out of 5. Definitely a memorable episode worth watching. So 4 out of 5 for Stopover in a Quiet Town. And as always, thank you very much for watching.